Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. It all started with a phone call from Carol, my friend since college. Eleanor, she'd said, her voice a little frayed around the edges. You know my brother, Michael, right? He's flying out to Seattle on Thursday, and I'm in a real bind. Can you possibly take him to the airport? Early flight, I'm afraid. Carol never asked for much. So when she did, you knew it was important. Michael, I'd met him a few times over the years at Carol's summer barbecues or the odd Thanksgiving. He was a quiet man, always seemed to be observing rather than participating, with a gentle smile that rarely fully reached his eyes. He was a good 10 years older than Carol, which would put him in his late 50s, I reckoned. Not a man of many words, but there was a certain kindness about him, a sort of settled stillness. Of course, Carol, I'd said, without really thinking about the crack of dawn departure. What time does he need to be there? Oh, you're a lifesaver. His flight's at 7 a.m., so maybe pick him up around 4:30. 4:30 a.m. The numbers hung in the air for a moment. I'm more of a night owl than an early bird. My best creative ideas for my little online craft store often striking me well after midnight. But a promise is a promise. Besides, there was something in Carol's voice, a slight tremor, that made me agree without hesitation. She'd been under a lot of stress lately, juggling her job and looking after her aging mother. Adding airport runs to that mix was clearly pushing her limits. So there I was, Thursday morning, the alarm clock shrilling at an hour I usually only saw if I hadn't been to bed yet. The sky outside my window was still a deep, velvety indigo, the kind that's more night than morning. I splashed cold water on my face, pulled on some comfortable jeans and a soft sweater, and made myself a quick, strong coffee. The world felt hushed, expectant. Driving through the empty streets of my quiet neighborhood, the only sounds were the hum of my car's engine and the occasional swish of automatic sprinklers on dew-kissed lawns. There's a peculiar kind of intimacy to the pre-dawn hours, a sense that you're privy to a secret world that sleeps while you're awake and moving. Michael lived in a modest, older house on the other side of town, a place with a well-tended garden. Even in the dim pre-dawn light, I could make out the neat rows of what looked like rose bushes, their heads bowed in sleep. As I pulled up to the curb, his porch light flicked on, casting a warm, yellow glow, and the front door opened almost immediately. He was ready, one suitcase and a worn leather satchel at his feet. He looked much the same as I remembered, medium height, a little stooped perhaps, with that same thoughtful, almost melancholic expression. His hair was grayer than I recalled, silver at the temples, and his face bore the quiet map of a life lived with consideration rather than haste. Eleanor, he said, his voice a soft baritone, a little gravelly, as if he hadn't used it yet that day. Thank you for this. I know it's terribly early. Not at all, Michael. I lied cheerfully, trying to inject some morning perkiness into my tone. Happy to help. Here, let me get that suitcase for you. He waved my offer away gently. I've got it. It's not heavy. He managed it with an ease that surprised me slightly. He seemed more robust than his quiet demeanor suggested. He placed the suitcase in the trunk, then settled into the passenger seat, his satchel on his lap. There was a faint, pleasant scent about him, something like old books and perhaps a hint of cedar. As I pulled away from the curb, a comfortable silence settled between us. Not an awkward one, but the kind you can share with someone you don't feel the need to fill every moment with chatter. The dashboard lights cast a soft glow on his hands as they rested on the leather satchel, his fingers long and slightly gnarled, the hands of someone who perhaps worked with them or thought a lot or both. I glanced at him briefly. His profile was silhouetted against the slowly lightening eastern sky, a pale blush of rose and lavender beginning to seep above the horizon. He was looking straight ahead, his gaze distant. I wondered what he was thinking about, where he was going in Seattle, and why Carol had sounded quite so anxious. She just said, "He's flying out." No details. Usually, Carol was a fountain of information, sometimes too much. This reticence was unusual. Seattle. Huh? I ventured, trying to keep my tone light. Business or pleasure? He turned his head slightly, and in the dim light, I thought I saw that smile again, a little less guarded this time. A bit of both, I suppose. More of a pilgrimage, you might say. Pilgrimage. That wasn't a word you heard every day in connection with a trip to Seattle. It hinted at something deeper, something more personal than a sales conference or a tourist jaunt to Pike Place Market. The subtle tension I'd felt earlier, that vague sense of something unspoken, seemed to crystallize a little. My curiosity, always a lively companion, perked up. I had a feeling this wouldn't be just a silent drive to the airport. The sky was now a symphony of awakening color, and the city around us was slowly stirring to life. Streetlights clicked off as we drove, almost in unison, as if acknowledging that their nightly vigil was over. I wondered what Michael's pilgrimage was about, and what, if anything, he might share in the quiet intimacy of a pre-dawn car ride. The air in the car felt charged, not with electricity, but with a kind of gentle anticipation. I focused on the road, but a part of me was acutely aware of the man sitting beside me, a man I barely knew who was about to embark on something that sounded far more significant than a simple flight. We drove on for a few miles, the hum of the tires on the asphalt a soothing backdrop. The initial silence had been comfortable, but now, after his use of the word pilgrimage, it felt laden with unspoken stories. I didn't want to pry, of course. He was Carol's brother and a virtual stranger to me. Still, the word hung in the air, inviting curiosity. I decided to offer a neutral opening, something he could respond to or ignore as he wished. "Seattle is a beautiful city," I said. "I was there a few years ago for a craft fair. The waterfront is lovely, and I remember the incredible coffee." Small talk, yes, but sometimes small talk is the bridge to something more. He nodded, his gaze still fixed on the unfolding morning outside his window. "Yes, it has its charms. I haven't been back in, well, a very long time. Over 30 years, I imagine. 30 years. That was a significant span of time to be away from a place you were now making a pilgrimage to." My mind started to piece together possibilities. An old flame, a place of profound personal memory, a resolution to unfinished business. It was like finding the edge of a jigsaw puzzle piece, knowing there was a much larger picture waiting to be revealed. "A lot can change in 30 years, I offered quietly. He let out a soft sigh, a sound that seemed to carry more weight than the simple exhalation of breath. "Indeed. And some things, I suspect, don't change nearly enough." He turned to look at me then, and for the first time, I felt the full focus of his gaze. His eyes, a surprisingly clear blue, were kind but held a depth of experience, perhaps a touch of sadness, that was quite arresting. "Carol mentioned you have an online store for crafts." The shift in topic was unexpected, but I welcomed it. It felt like he was extending a small courtesy, a way of balancing the conversation. "Yes, that's right. Eleanor's Emporium of Artful Things," I said, a little sheepishly. The name had seemed grander when I'd first come up with it. "I make jewelry, a bit of pottery, some knitted things. It keeps me busy." That sounds fulfilling, he said, and it didn't sound like a platitude. To create something tangible with your own hands. There's an honesty in that, isn't there? There is, I agreed, surprised by his insight. It's a way of putting a little bit of yourself out into the world, I suppose. I rarely discussed my work with such straightforwardness, especially with people I didn't know well, but his earnestness was disarming. I used to work with my hands a lot, he said, his gaze dropping to his own hands, still resting on the leather satchel. I was a carpenter for many years. Furniture, mostly, custom pieces. Really, I could picture it. The quiet precision, the patience required. That's wonderful work. Do you still do any woodworking? A shadow seemed to pass over his features, fleeting but noticeable. No, not for a long time now. Life took a different turn. He paused, then added, I moved into archival work at the university library. A different kind of preservation, I suppose. Quieter, less dust. He gave a small, almost self deprecating smile. The contrast between the physicality of carpentry and the quiet scholarship of archival work was stark. It hinted at a story, a significant shift in his life's trajectory. The pilgrimage to Seattle, after 30 years, began to feel even more layered. We were now merging onto the freeway, the early commuter traffic starting to build, though still sparse compared to what it would be in an hour or two. The sky was a brilliant canvas of orange, pink, and gold, the kind of sunrise that makes you stop and marvel even on a rushed airport run. That's quite a change, I commented, from shaping wood to curating history. It was, he said simply. He didn't elaborate further on the reasons for the change, and I didn't press. Instead, he shifted in his seat slightly, turning more towards me. Carol worries about me, you know? This was unexpected. She cares about you a great deal. I said carefully, that's clear. She does, and I appreciate it. But she imagines I'm lonelier than I am, or perhaps sadder. He looked out the window again, at the rapidly brightening world. This trip, for instance. She was quite concerned when I told her I was going alone. Well, it's natural for family to worry, I said, thinking of Carol's anxious tone on the phone. Perhaps. He gave a small shrug. But sometimes solitude isn't loneliness. Sometimes it's just space. Space to think, to remember. He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, or to prepare. Prepare for what? The question hung silently in the car. The shocking part of this story, the thing that Carol had inadvertently set in motion by asking me to drive her brother to the airport, felt like it was drawing nearer. It wasn't a feeling of dread, not at all. It was more like the stillness before a summer storm, when the air is thick with anticipation and the world holds its breath. I glanced at the fuel gauge, plenty of gas. I checked the time on the dashboard clock. We were making good time. Everything was normal, mundane even, and yet I had a distinct feeling that this journey was about to become anything but. The man beside me, Michael, Carol's quiet brother, was like a book with a plain cover that concealed an unexpected and compelling narrative, and I had a feeling I was about to be allowed a glimpse into its pages. The city was waking up around us, but in the small, contained world of my car, a different kind of awakening seemed to be taking place. The freeway traffic was beginning to thicken, the lanes filling with cars carrying people to their ordinary Thursdays. But there was nothing ordinary about the sense of unfolding revelation in my car. Michael had lapsed back into silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. It felt less like reticence and more like he was gathering his thoughts, perhaps deciding what, or how much he wanted to share. I focused on my driving, navigating the merging lanes, and the gradual increase in speed of the vehicles around us. The sun was higher now, a brilliant disk in the eastern sky, and the full light of day was washing over the landscape. You know, Michael said, his voice soft but clear above the hum of the road. It's funny how a particular place can hold so much of your past, almost like a container. You can stay away for decades, build a whole other life, but the memories tied to that place, they just wait for you. Seattle holds a lot for you. Then, I murmured, more a statement than a question. He nodded slowly. It does. My wife, my late wife, Sarah, she was from Seattle. We met there, fell in love there. Our first home was a tiny apartment overlooking Puget Sound. His voice was gentle, imbued with a tender nostalgia. The mention of his late wife explained the sadness I'd sometimes glimpsed in his eyes. I'm so sorry for your loss, Michael, I said softly. It felt important to acknowledge it. Thank you, Eleanor, he replied, his gaze distant, as if he were seeing that apartment, that view right now. It was a long time ago. She passed away nearly 35 years ago, very suddenly. An aneurysm. One day she was here, full of life, laughing, and the next she was gone. He spoke the words calmly, but there was an undercurrent of pain that even decades hadn't entirely erased. 35 years. And he hadn't been back to Seattle in 30. The timing suggested he'd left shortly after her death, perhaps unable to bear the weight of the memories in that city. My heart went out to him, to carry such grief for so long, and to be returning now to the place where it all began and ended. This was no ordinary trip. This was, indeed, a pilgrimage. That must have been incredibly difficult, I said, my voice filled with a sympathy that was entirely genuine. To lose someone so young, so suddenly, it was, he affirmed, his hands tightening almost imperceptibly on the leather satchel in his lap. It changed everything. I think a part of me died with her. The carpenter you asked about, he died that day too. I think I couldn't find joy in creation anymore. The wood felt lifeless in my hands. Everything felt lifeless. His confession hung in the air, raw and honest. This was the core of the change, the reason for the shift from carpenter to archivist. It wasn't just a career change. It was a life irrevocably altered by loss. I understood now the quiet melancholy that always seemed to cling to him, the gentle smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was a man who had known profound love and profound sorrow. So, the archives? I began trying to connect the pieces. The archives were quiet, he said, orderly, dealing with the past, with things already completed, felt manageable, unlike the future, which seemed terrifyingly empty. At the library, I could lose myself in other people's stories, in the meticulously preserved records of lives lived. It was a refuge in a way. We were approaching the airport now. The signs for the terminals were beginning to appear, and the pace of everything around us seemed to quicken. The traffic, the planes taking off and landing in the distance, the sense of purpose and urgency that always pervades airports. But inside my car, time seemed to have slowed. Michael's story was unfolding with a quiet intensity that held me captive. And this trip, I asked gently, why now, after all this time? He took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought he might not answer. He looked out the window at the sprawling complex of the airport, a place of comings and goings, of hellos and goodbyes. Then he turned back to me, and his blue eyes, though tinged with sadness, also held a spark of something else, resolve perhaps, or a quiet kind of courage. There's something I need to do, Eleanor, he said, his voice low and steady. Something I should have done a long, long time ago. Sarah, she had a favorite place, a little secluded cove on the Sound. We scattered some of her ashes there, her parents, and but I, I kept a small portion. I told myself I wasn't ready to let her go completely. He paused, and his hand went to the leather satchel on his lap. I've carried this with me for 35 years. My breath caught in my throat. The satchel, it wasn't just old books or travel documents. It was so much more. This was the shocking revelation, not in a scandalous way, but in its profound emotional weight, its testament to enduring love and long-held grief. This quiet, unassuming man had been carrying a part of his lost love with him, physically, for over 3 decades. Oh, Michael, I whispered, my own voice thick with emotion. I didn't know what else to say. The sheer depth of his devotion, his quiet, steadfast mourning, was overwhelming. I'm old now, he continued, a faint, wry smile touching his lips. Or getting there. And it occurred to me, rather forcefully, a few months ago, that I don't want to leave this world with her still waiting in a box in my closet. She deserves to be free, completely free, in the place she loved. And I think I need to be the one to finally let her go there, in that place. It's time. The quiet dignity with which he spoke, the immense love that had driven this decades-long act of remembrance. And now this final journey, it was profoundly moving. The shocking truth wasn't an event in the typical sense. It was the unveiling of a hidden, sacred part of a human soul. It was the realization that this ordinary man, my friend's brother, was undertaking an extraordinary act of love and closure. We were pulling up to the departures curb for his airline. The usual airport bustle was all around us. Taxis honking, passengers wrestling with luggage, skycaps calling out. It felt like a different universe from the intensely personal, emotionally charged atmosphere inside my car. I found a spot and put the car in park. For a moment, neither of us moved. The weight of his story, his impending task, settled between us. I felt like I had been entrusted with something precious, a glimpse into a private, sacred grief that he had carried for so long. Michael, I said, turning to him, my voice still hushed, thank you for telling me. That's a beautiful, brave thing you're doing. He looked at me, and this time, the smile, though still gentle, seemed to truly reach his eyes. There was a lightness there that I hadn't seen before, a sense of peace, perhaps, or at least the anticipation of it. Thank you for listening, Eleanor, and for the ride. It means more than you know. He unbuckled his seatbelt and reached for the door handle, his other hand still resting protectively on the leather satchel. I suppose this is it, he said. Let me help you with your suitcase. I offered, my earlier offer now feeling more significant, as if helping with the mundane bag was a small way to support the monumental task represented by the satchel. He nodded. Thank you. We got out of the car, the cool morning air, now fully bright with sunshine, feeling fresh on my face. I retrieved his suitcase from the trunk, and he took it from me with a grateful nod. We stood there for a moment, amidst the organized chaos of the airport curb, two near strangers who had shared something unexpectedly profound in the quiet intimacy of a pre-dawn drive. He looked at me, his blue eyes clear. You know, Eleanor, he said, Carol worries I don't connect with people easily. I suppose I don't, not anymore. But this, talking with you, it's been a gift. For me too, Michael, I replied, and I meant it with all my heart. This was no longer just a favor for Carol. This brief journey had touched me in a way I hadn't anticipated. It was a stark reminder of the deep currents of love, loss, and remembrance that flow beneath the surface of ordinary lives. He extended his hand, not for a handshake, but just a brief, warm clasp of mine. Take care, Eleanor. You too, Michael. I said, I hope, I hope your pilgrimage brings you peace. He nodded, a small, affirming gesture. Then, with his suitcase in one hand and the precious leather satchel held securely in the other, he turned and walked towards the entrance of the terminal, merging into the stream of travelers, each with their own stories, their own destinations. I watched him go, this quiet man carrying the weight of a 35-year love story in a simple leather bag, on his way to perform a final act of devotion. The sun glinted off the glass doors as he disappeared inside. I stood by my car for a few moments, the sounds of the airport fading into a dull roar as I replayed our conversation in my mind. The shocking part wasn't some dramatic incident. It was the quiet unfolding of a man's deeply personal grief and enduring love shared with an unexpected confidant in the fleeting intimacy of an early morning car ride. It was shocking in its tenderness, its quiet heroism. Driving away from the airport, the city now fully awake and bustling, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Carol's call, for the chance encounter, for Michael's willingness to share something so deeply personal. It was a reminder that everyone carries a story, often a hidden one, and that sometimes, if we're lucky, we get to be a small part of its telling. My day had started with a reluctant pre-dawn alarm, but it had unfolded into something rich and unexpectedly meaningful. I knew I wouldn't forget Michael or his journey to Seattle. His story had, in a small way, become a part of mine. And as I drove home, the rising sun warming my face, I felt a renewed appreciation for the quiet strength of the human heart, its capacity for love, its resilience in the face of loss, and its enduring need for connection, however brief or unexpected. This was more than just an airport run. It was a lesson in empathy, a meditation on love and letting go. And I felt a quiet sense of growth within myself, a deeper understanding of the invisible threads that connect us all,